Good afternoon. My name is Sean McGuire, and I'm the Executive Director at the Albany County Land Bank. It is 2:35 today, Wednesday, May 13th, 2026. We're calling to order a meeting of the Land Bank's Executive Committee, and we're holding this meeting remotely per New York State Open Meetings Law. This meeting is available on the Land Bank's YouTube channel for listening and viewing. Today on the call, participating in the committee, we have the following board members, Charles Toohey and Sam Wells. Natisha Alexander and Joe Seaman Graves are absent. From the Land Bank staff, you have myself, Susan, Lillian, Jason, and Nancy. So we have the agenda has been circulated ahead of time, has a number of items. We don't have quorum at this point, so I think at this point we'll just go through things for an informational update. And then if we have if Natisha is able to join us, we can go back to review and approve those minutes if everybody's okay with that. If we don't get her, then what we'll do is hold the new business just to a full board update there. All right. Any objections to that?
None here.
All right, hearing none. All right, thank you. Hearing none, we'll move on. I'll go through the review and approval of the financial reports for April. I'm going to give you, I'm trying to give a little bit more of a narrative before we just go right into line numbers, but I will reference line numbers, but I want to give just some overviews before we go into strict numbers, if that's okay with everybody. All right, so right now the Land Bank enters our second quarter in a sound financial position. We have over $3.9 million in liquid bank balances and cash, $5.2 million in total equity, and nearly $2 million in committed grant resources. And we do have the capacity to sustain our operations and advance our development pipeline through the rest of the year. In April, we do have a year-to-date net deficit of $305,000. That does reflect the Land Bank's typical early year financial profile, with a lot of costs being front-loaded at the start of the year. I do want to note that the deficit does represent a 9.45% improvement over the same period in 2025, and our operating expenses have been essentially flat year over year. The primary area that we continue to monitor is property sales activity, which is running below the prior year's pace due to inventory. And so as the year goes on, we'll continue to assess whether the current pipeline of real estate transactions is enough to close that gap, or whether we need to take other steps there. So the financial statements presented cover the period of January through April 2026 and are compared where they're applicable to the same year or the same period in the prior year. So right now we'll go through the line items. I'm going to start with assets on line 32. You'll see we have total assets of $7.3 million. Our total current assets, starting at line 25, include our $7.2 million. That goes up to line 8, where we have bank accounts at $3.9 million in cash. The bulk of that is held in our unrestricted savings account, which is a money market account, which gives our best yields on interest. And that's at line 7, that's $3.8 million. And that provides a lot of strong operating liquidity. We have grant receivables on line 15 at nearly $2 million, 1.988. That consists primarily of our LBI-2 capital grant program. That's line 13, $1.838 million. And our LBI operations, line 14, $150,000 in assets there. We have property inventory on line 23 at $1.279 million, and that reflects the gross inventory values across acquisition, construction, stabilization, and full rehabs. And that's offset by a lower of cost or market adjustment on line 22, which is $2.8 million, 2.896. Lines 10 through 11 are our prepaid expenses and insurance. That totals $47,000, $600. And then on line 31, we'll go to fixed assets, and they net to $148,000 on line 31, including right-to-use assets on line 29 at $260,000. That's partially offset by accumulated amortization on line 30 at $114,000. Any questions on the asset side of the balance sheet?
LBI. The LBI, there's two numbers there, and how restrictive are they?
The LBI operations is what we submit quarterly, which really covers some staff salary and covers our property insurance. The other one, that $1.8 million, that's the one we're waiting for permits from the city. We did the approval of the demolitions last month. Jason's got those lined up. We'll have a full update on those at the board meeting. And so that the LBI capital is where there's a little bit more work ahead of us to get through that. So, and that's part of our rebuilding our contractor list, doing some outreach to identify more people to work with. And so we've got properties in that pipeline. All right, I'll go down to liabilities and equity, but I just wanted to point out here, and I just want to periodically do this because this is open to the public. I mentioned earlier the lower of cost or market method when we talk about our inventory. And that's what we do to put our real estate assets on our books, on our balance sheet. And so what we do is that we reflect the lower of the cost to acquire the property or the cost that the market would pay for the property. And we use the assessed value as a market, as a stand-in for the market. And so and we actually do that at 30%. So when we get those numbers, that's what we reflect. So we actually take a conservative approach in our balance sheet when it comes to those types of assets. All right. Yep, go ahead.
The 1.2 million represents how many properties and how many, which is land and buildings? Just a quick top line of that. 1.2 million land bank property. It's been depreciated. How many lots?
Yeah, I'm sorry, go ahead, Charlie.
How many lots and how many buildings does the 1.2 million represent?
Let me bring that up for you because we have it across the different columns here. That inventory changes. So right now we own a total of 168 properties across the board. We have 60 of those are for sale. We have 57 properties as part of a project that could be flip the block, that could be the home ownership parcels for the South End project, and that can be some of those properties on the development pipeline. We had 17 sales pending after the last time we reconciled. We still had properties in the co-development, that's 11 properties there. 6 that have some title problems that we continue to work through with quiet title actions. We have 6 that are under option and some that are in application process to the board. But 168 in total. I'd say the most important number there is to know that really the inventory that we're working with day to day is the 60. And then we're looking to, as we continue to move through the pipeline on some of ours, that those 57 that are being held for one thing or the other are going to be future sales opportunities.
So of the 60, how many are houses and how many are lots?
Out of those, I believe they are exclusively lots right now.
For sale?
Yeah, exclusively lots.
Yeah, so the purpose of my question was that how did we build the 1.2 million? If we suddenly sold everything because the lots themselves aren't worth too much.
No, yeah, I mean that 1.2 million. I probably have to do a little bit of work to break that down to building and lots in the inventory, but yeah, we could try to get a better number for the board meeting to let you know what that makes up. But that's helpful.
I understand what we're doing. We want to bring the value down as per the accountants and everything else because these aren't that marketable. But it's still nice for the board to say, look, we have so many vacant lots and we have so many buildings. Yeah, like that.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. All right, so we'll keep going down on the liability side. On line 57, we had total liabilities of $2.1 million. On line 37, we had accounts payable of $50,000. On line 52, we had deferred revenue of $1.976 million. Again, that's the grant income that we have been awarded, but until we spend it, we don't realize it. So we show a deferred revenue as a liability that we'll realize as that money comes in. Line 48 is our office rent, that's our lease liability. And then line 40 is our credit card balance, $2,500. That's relatively nominal. That's just the monthly transactions that are still pending and that'll get paid. We pay those all up every month. So just buys us a little bit more time. It makes it a little bit easier to do some of the purchasing we do here. And then on equity, line 61, we had total equity of $5.1 million. Our unrestricted net assets on line 59 were $5.4 million. And then our year-to-date net revenue deficit, as I mentioned when we started here, line 60 is negative $305,000. And again, that's consistent with our operation pattern that carries a lot of property costs at the start of the year, with sales activity balancing out as the year moves on. But again, one of the challenges of that is that we're dealing with 60 lots, and that's why we've got 57 properties in the development pipeline that aren't currently for sale that we're looking to add value into so that we can put those improved properties out into the marketplace. Any questions on the balance sheet?
Sean, not a question, just a suggestion. I know, for that net revenue figure, I would just obviously, Charlie and I are very familiar. We know the strategy. We know that number is going to change over the long term. If you have any, projected large sales that'll help close that over the course of the remainder of the year, just might be helpful to mention that at the board meeting, in case anybody has, nerves about that number. I'm confident in our team and our ability to close that gap down, but I think it might just be helpful. Because I know we've done that in the past,
Yeah.
right? Last year we were looking for that South End redevelopment check to come in, and that helped big time. Anything like that would, I think, help to mention at the board meeting when you mention that number.
Yeah, I mean, we are now in the thick of adding value into the properties and then selling those properties back off. I mean, that's going to be the key for us moving forward and this new model that we're working on, and not just being a replacement to auctions, but actually taking the first steps in a neighborhood to invest where they haven't seen that before. So yeah, we can certainly dig through that a little bit more and give some more detail on that. And I'll say about the property values too. I mean, we always book them conservatively, and I'll go through the profit and loss. You'll see some of the challenges that exist even when we book a value conservatively. Sometimes we don't end up selling it for what we initially booked it for, and then we take a more of a loss on it. And I think that's sort of where we are with a lot of these $600 lots. And I want to take a look at the amount of value that we provide to those, because I think we may want to talk as a board whether we still want to hold those values where they are, or do we want to reduce those values further so that way we're not overstating our assets. I don't think there's a big concern there. I don't think we're talking about significant swings. But the other side of it too is that we see what we're holding some of these lots for, and we see when they go to the county auction that they're being bid up pretty well. So, but again, it's kind of hard to compare apples to apples there, because we have a different expectation of our buyers than somebody at auction who really just has to provide their documentation that they can afford to purchase what they're getting themselves into.
I agree. I think it's completely, it's apples and oranges. A lot of those auction buyers, I don't think there's a rational basis for a lot of those numbers. I mean, the December auction, majority of the buyers were from out of state, and a good number of them were from out of the country too. So I don't think, I mean, I know people are going to make those comparisons, but I don't think they're valid in any way. It's completely different. We weed, our process was designed over many years and tweaked over many years to weed out the non-rational actors from even bidding in the first place. So, yeah, I agree with you there.
Yeah, so we'll see. I mean, we'll see how our strategy panned out too, bidding, and I think, we can certainly talk, I think we'll cover this a little bit in the real estate committee, but, we did get the 8 properties at auction, and we were happy with the process. We're happy with our approach, our strategy, and our execution on it. I think what we expected to happen happened, which is the buildings just became too expensive. But again, we can drive a lot more value onto the lots than I think with some of the capital that we have access to. So we'll keep going in that direction. All right. I'm going to go on to the profit and loss unless there's any other questions there. All right. I'm going to start on the profit and loss. We'll start with the revenue side, lines 1 through 19. So our total revenue year to date is $51,000. That's down from $87,000 the same period last year on line 19. But line 6, our interest income at $44,000 is our largest revenue source year to date. So that strategy of finding an attractive money market account with a really strong interest rate and just managing our cash to keep it there as long as possible, is paying off for us. So I'm pleased to see that. Our property sale income, our net property sale income on line 11 is a loss of $700-800. That's a negative net due to book values exceeding sale prices in the current period. So that's where I said, we might want to look at, we need to adjust the book values of some of our properties. But we're that's just something to monitor right now, not something that needs to be addressed immediately. So we'll just keep monitoring that. Our gross sales on line 7 were $30,800, and that was against what we booked as a value on line 8 at $38,600. So that's a decline from last year's prior gross sales of $251,250. But again, we had some different properties out there, and so we're just in this swing at this moment. On line 17, fee income was $4,000. That was down from $12,000 about the last period last year, primarily due to application processing, asset management, and enforcement management fees. Again, with not a lot of properties to move out the door, and we're developing them, they are not bringing a lot of applications, and we're okay with that. The next one is the line 12, donation of property for resale, $10,500. We actually have no prior comparables, so that was the property that was donated that we recorded on our books in 2026. That's Cleveland Street. 9 Cleveland Street, thank you. And then on line 5, as our grant income, we're at 0 right now. We do have some draws that have to get in, and Jason and I are working on those. And so that's just the difference of $180,000 last year in line 5. But we were also more active in our last LBI Phase 2 spend down. So there's a lot that was coming at the very end there. And that, again, reflects the timing of the LBI grant recognition. The LBI operations and capital funds are currently being carried as that deferred revenue on the balance sheet. Our cost of goods sold, our year-over-year, we've got year-over-year improvement on our cost of goods sold. And so in the first 4 months of 2026, cost of goods sold total $108,525. Actually a reduction of 44% from $194,836 in the same period last year. That's lower demolition construction activity. We had that sudden demolition on the Clinton Avenue Phase 3 project. We had to take that one building down. And it's consistent with our current phase of the Flip the Block project, and we'll start to spend that demolition money down as those advance along. It also reflects reduced property insurance across the portfolio as the portfolio shrinks, we have less insurance costs to manage with that. But again, as we start to develop, we'll start seeing things that we are insure as vacant lots. As we make improvements, we'll have to start carrying those as improved buildings, and that will have an impact on our insurance, but we'll anticipate those in our pro formas as we go forward. The net result is a loss of $56,000 for the period, but again, that's a 47% improvement over last year, which was a gross loss of $107,000. It's an indicator that we have a more efficient portfolio management headed into the second half of the fiscal year. On line 56, our costs, I just went over the cost of goods sold. That's what you'll see that. Our property maintenance on line 37 was at $61,000. It's our largest cost of goods sold item. It is up slightly, almost 18% net of snow removal, and then April alone was $18,000. On line 49, you'll see our insurance for property-related insurance at $27,000. That's down 44% from last year. Our demolition professional expenses cost on line 36 is at $2,000. That's preliminary costs associated with the flip the block demolitions. We don't have any costs yet this year, but I think will we have those expended next? No, we'll have those in May or June. We'll probably see them in June. By the time it gets done and we build them out, it'll be June. And then our capitalized costs, our construction acquisition, we're net to zero as we expected, but the gross construction of $260,000 fully capitalized on lines 24 through 25. And then our operating expenses, starting at line 58, we have total operating expenses of $260,000 on line 104. That's down 4.25% from last year. Our payroll is our dominant expenditure, line 68 at $159,000. That's up 7.7% from the prior year. That's mostly in the health insurance space. Salaries are relatively flat on line 60, $126,931 from this year versus $125,349 last year. It's our health insurance that's gone up to $15,850 from $8,895. And that was on line 64. That is because we've had one of the staff who was not taking health insurance has taken health insurance now, and just with more people taking advantage of that. We plan for a higher number than we usually realize, and so I'm not worried about that. It's just that the performance of it just looks a little different because we have people taking advantage of that in the past hadn't. So, and our payroll taxes on line 66, those are up to 21%, and those have gone up. Our professional services on line 79 is at $62,000. That's down 7.39%. That includes our accounting, our attorney, our audit services, and our IT. Our IT was up to $7,800 in this period, and we had some renewals that had to come along for different services. And one other thing that's going to change too, Microsoft is discontinuing the free licenses to us, but we do get a significantly discounted license. And so it's nothing I would consider to be material. It goes from zero to something, but the something's not a big number. So for other revenue and the net result, our insurance reimbursements on line 109, we had almost $8,000 in insurance reimbursements. On line 107, we had miscellaneous income of $3,400. Our total other revenue on line 111 is $11,422. That was down from $41,000 last year, which included a large insurance reimbursement as we fought with the insurance company to challenge their assessment. You remember we had a big bill, we paid it, and then we went and challenged them, and then we did get a significant refund on that. Our net revenue year to date, line 113, is still that negative $305,651, but again, that's an improved almost 10%, 9.45% from loss of $337,557 in the prior year, or not a loss, but an operating deficit at that point. So that's the profit and loss. I give you just some key observation here. The positive items, our financial position is solid, $3.9 million in the bank with $5 million in equity. Our Operating deficit is structurally typical for this period. Our revenue model is back-weighted towards property sales and grant drawdowns that tend to occur later in the year. Our interest income is outperforming over the prior year. Our cost of goods sold has improved by 44% year over year, resulting from more efficient portfolio management. Continue to monitor those health insurance costs, but we are pretty, confident in what that is. We'll continue to, pay mind to the property sales activity. And again, we're going to look to rely on improved property sales to help drive that number upwards. And then otherwise, two neutral indicators, are near $2 million in deferred revenue. It's just those grant resources that will be recognized as income once we make those qualifying expenditures. And then our demolition costs will be coming down the road, but again, that will come back out of the grant funds. And then the other thing is, you have the additional sheet. There are some adjustments on the March financials. A lot of times, like the attorney's costs come in later, and they get posted to the account, so you typically see that most of the time. So that's where we ended up with late entries for March. Any questions about those statements? And so my notes for the board meeting is just to give you a little bit more insight on the breakdown of those assets, lots versus buildings. And Charlie, you want me to give you a sense on the value of lots, what we book as the value of the lots versus what we book as the value of the buildings?
Yeah, just a thumbnail.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah,
we can do that.
Sam's point was that, they look at the $305,000 deficit. If you stretch that out over the 12 months, say, well, so all he was saying was that you don't want to scare the board with, oh my God, we lost $300,000, right? So you have
yeah, and we always have that in the beginning of the year. It's like we carry that operating deficit all year long as we make progress.
So
you'll see.
Whether you want to explain it visually on some chart or something to say, yeah, in April it was this, but long term it ends up at that. I know you don't want to predict anything, but.
Yeah. And it's like our county, the support we get from the county, which we're, using to help acquire properties at auction before, they're in somebody else's hands. That we're using that to help with that strategic acquisition. So, but we'll see that money come in too. Yeah. 2 items of new business. I know that we talked last month, but because I wasn't going to be at the board meeting, we did not put the addition of Kenny Shelton Liptak Nowak as an additional awardee for legal services. I just wanted to be able to address any questions anybody had, but we just wanted to have that backup counsel to Brian Rohan. We don't need it with Whiteman. Whiteman's a big enough firm. There's so many attorneys there that we're good. But with Brian, if he gets overwhelmed or something happens, we just want to have somebody to back him up. We had 2 people, and you'll remember this committee was did not feel that the one candidate who we previously worked with would have been a good fit, but I know we didn't have any objections to that. So if the committee's still okay with it, we'll just bring that to a resolution for the board meeting to approve KSLN out of Syracuse and Buffalo to be that backup attorney. And if you remember, one of the partners there had early experience with the Syracuse Land Bank and forming it. So that's how they came to us, is her interest in land banking. And then we did have Caroline, our new board member. I'm going to check in with the governance committee. Usually falls to them, but we need to assign her to a committee, and I'm going to recommend that we assign her to the governance committee. We have space there. And then throughout the year, if there's other places that Michelle or Caroline want to fit in, or if there's other, moves that people want to make on committees because they don't feel like it's really where they want to be, or they want to do something a little bit different, we can always adjust along the way. And this is more for Sam because Charlie knows about it. I have met with 2 people interested in the Community Engagement Committee. I have sent their information over to Mark Bob Semple for the Community Engagement Committee. to take a look at. I'm just waiting. I got to check in with Mark. I haven't heard back from him as to what they'd like to do for next steps, because the way we presented it is that I'm happy to, get a referral, meet with somebody, feel them out, and explain to them what the land bank is, but then wanted somebody from the Community Engagement Committee to have a conversation with those people as well to make sure that they're the right addition to that committee.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yep.
And that's all I've got for the Executive Committee, unless you have anything else.
No, I'm good on my end.
All right. The only other thing I'll share is I did get a chance to see some folks. I was recognized with the Local Government Champions Award by the National Academy of Public Administration yesterday. And so I'm fresh off a train from Philadelphia. I went down yesterday and back today. But they recognized 250 leaders, local government leaders, public administrators across the country. And I was actually pretty impressed. I got to share the stage with the president of the American Planning Association, who's also recognized as a champion. And I got to meet one of my fellow planners from Ithaca, New York, who's also recognized. So it was a nice, pleasant piece. So we'll add that to our website and, share the good news. So.
Make sure you bring that up at the board meeting. Hopefully, did you come home with a plaque or a certificate?
I came home with a certificate and a pin, and I was going to bring home some cookies, but they were way in my pockets down, so I did not bring the cookies back. But if you'd like cookies, I will bake some cookies.
Bring it up at the board meeting.
Pocket cookies, yes.
The cookies, yeah.
Pocket cookies. Yeah, no, I left yesterday, took the train down, and then I was on the before 7 a.m. train to get back up here. So it was a good celebration. I got a lot of work done on the train. I think everybody in the team can see. We're just sending emails back and forth. So
yeah, pocket
right.
cookies don't worry me. I've seen much worse.
Yeah. All right.
Saw somebody
Well,
whip
yeah,
out a bag of pocket sauerkraut once. That was interesting.
Pocket sauerkraut. I had a little conversation with somebody about pocket cherries at Lark Hall. Actually, at the 11 at Lark Hall, I had a whole conversation about pocket cherries because somebody did not want a cherry with whatever they were having. I don't know how it turned out. Pocket sauerkraut. I don't know, but
yeah, I'm not saying I felt great about it. I just, saw it. That's all. Anyways, we're off topic.
All right, everybody. Thanks so much. We'll 3:15 for the